And it's going to give me great excitement to introduce our next speaker because I've had the privilege of knowing this person for nearly a decade, Dr. Lee Meadows. Dr. Meadows is a professor at Walsh College, professor of management, recently retired, which is exciting for him, and a consultant with over 30 years of experience working in the field of leadership development. When he is not teaching undergrad and graduate courses in leadership, management, and human resources for Walsh College, he is developing leadership programs for several organizations. He also publishes monthly articles on his LinkedIn page and remains active in working with youth. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lee Meadows.
Jason, as always, you set me a little too high, so I hope not to fall too long. Anyway, hey, welcome and thank you all for having me here. I look forward to the opportunity of talking with you. Thank you, Jacob, for a wonderful presentation. I feel inspired by some of the things that you said, and I'm going to try and build on those things in terms of moving forward. My name is Lee Meadows, and as Jason already mentioned, I'm officially retired professor of management at Walsh College, but I've been studying this stuff for a long time, and when asked to come forward and talk to you about some of these things, I was delighted to have the opportunity and glad to be able to move forward. So I want to set this up by, I'm going to set this up by having us talk about a couple of things, but here's my premise behind a lot of this game. When we talk about empowerment, one of the things that I want you to keep in mind as part of your framework is empowerment encompasses two different things. Of course, the leadership part and the empowerment part. But here's the framework that I want you to start thinking about. Whenever you are in any leadership role, and being in a leadership role is extremely exciting, and I hope you all continue to be excited about that. What you're really looking at is what we do with others. Leadership is about how you impact the lives of others, whether it's within the workplace, whether it's when some kind of civic engagement. It doesn't matter. When you assume a leadership role, you're really thinking about what it is that I do with others and how well do we do that. Now, empowerment, what that starts to get into is what happens with others when we are leading. What happens with others when we are leading, and why that becomes such an important part of of how we think and how we tend to move forward with that. So in doing that, let me set it up by saying that today, for the time that I have with you, I'm going to spend time giving you a framework where you focus on your Mac. Now, I don't mean your Mac computer. I don't mean for any of you to leave the session and run to McDonald's and get a Big Mac. No, I'm talking about some specific initials about mindset, about activities, and about context. The framework for thinking about empowerment operates within this notion of what I refer to as your Mac. Leadership is exciting, and let's the excitement begin. So I'm going to give you some things to think about within focusing your Mac and some strategies for trying to move that forward. So let's talk about the first part of it, which is your mindset. I'm wondering when any of you stepped into your first leadership role, did anybody give you any clue as to what you were about to step into? Odds are pretty good that they didn't. You may have had individuals with whom you had a role model. You may have individuals that you observed. You may have had individuals who say, well, this is the best way to do this. Oftentimes, one of the things that begins to happen when you're trying to shift your mindset is you're trying to shift it from what we used to refer in leadership as a tactical approach to leading. And in a tactical approach, there are some basic elements that always emerge. One of the things about being a tactical is that you assume the role of boss. And boss means that I know and no one else does. Do as I say. I know this is what needs to happen, and this is how we do that. Now, some of that does involve some forms of delegation, but delegation from the standpoint of check back with me, make sure that I'm informed, keep me in the loop, don't make any decisions about anything. And then it's also just the bits and pieces, sharing of information, hoarding information and not sharing it with your team or your reports in such a way that they can effectively do their job. Now, we used to train around this tactical leadership approach for any number of years, and all it did was lead to our demise. So in the words of a famous conductor who said to a group of musicians before they came into the studio to record the famous song, We Are the World, check your ego at the door and come in and make a difference. When you come in to make a difference, what you are doing is moving from tactical to transformational. In a transformational mindset, you are not the boss, but you are the facilitator of talent that's been put in front of you. Your job is to make that talent work in ways that service both the organization and themselves as well. What that means, and I want all of you to get real comfortable with this, is that you shift from an I know point of view to they know. Believe me, if you have more than 2 people who report to you, they already know twice as much as you do. And rather than hold that information back, what you're trying to do is to make sure that you have access to all of that information that's being brought forward to you. And one of the best ways to begin to empower folks is to assign them things that represent their talents and going to stretch their talents in a way that's going to help them to grow and grow in ways that make them better and the organization better. And the only way you can really accomplish that, ladies and gentlemen, is using transparency as part of this mind shift. Ask yourself, when you're in a leadership role, what is it that people should not know in terms of being able to carry out their job? What information is it that they shouldn't have in order to carry out their job? What is it that we need to hold back to keep them from doing their job? And the answer is nothing. Absolutely nothing. Unless there's some kind of legal thing going on or something involved, secret information about a merger. When you are in a leadership role, your job is to transform what happens with your employees, and information is one of the best ways to do that, and being transparent about information is always helpful from that regard. Now from there, let's talk about activities, because one of the things you're trying to do in moving from a tactical mindset to a transforming mindset is to begin to look at what are some of the activities that drive what you do. And it's done from a couple of points of view. From the tactical, traditional point of view, we always refer to that as controlling. And Jason and a few others will know, because we often talked about this in a lot of our dialogue, that one of the edicts that always used to be put out back in the day was, you do things my way, or it's called my way or the highway. Do it my way or leave. And this was an interesting premise, but all it did was lead to a lot of turnover, a lot of toxic environments, and those kinds of things. Under this particular model, people say, I think and you do. So I think of the solutions, you carry them out. Don't do anything unless you check with me first. And we allocate resources according to the people that we like versus the people who are going to help to get the job done. And one of the other things that happens on that model is we only criticize mistakes. So I never hear from you unless you're saying something, unless you're commenting on something that I've done wrong. From a transformational standpoint, ladies and gentlemen, what you're trying to do is unleash the talents of the people that you have with you for a variety of different reasons. You move from this being my way to it's our choice. And by our choice, it means that we've gathered input, we've looked at all the information, and that we as a team are moving this particular project and ideas forward. We collaborate and then we do together. If you don't, if you haven't been hit with the whole collaboration notion early, you need to start integrating that into your thinking as a way of unleashing talent. Because there's no way you can keep up with all the complexity of things that are going on in the workplace and outside of the workplace. And having access to information from the people that you lead and collaborating around that becomes important. You also want to make sure that you are encouraging people to take the initiative. They don't always have to check with you on everything, but they do need your support when they take initiative around things that what we refer to as low-hanging fruit in the organization. Things that are just sitting there waiting to be done and no one's taking initiative to take care of that. You want to reward that. You also want to make sure you're recognizing performance. All right, not the likes, but you're recognizing performance. Who are the individuals who are consistently delivering, given the fact that they've taken initiative or that they've collaborated or they've done all the things that are necessary in terms of keeping people empowered. And whatever you do, you're also trying to communicate to improve the performance of individuals, not to harp on their mistakes. Because in the long run, what you begin to realize is that people find a very interesting way of dealing with criticism. It's called leaving you and taking the talents on to other locations. All right, so let's talk about context. What is our context for right now, ladies and gentlemen? The most obvious one, of course, is that we're working in this COVID-19 environment. And this COVID-19 environment has changed things in such a way that we move to what we refer to now as this new normal. And look at some of the things that have happened as a result of this. You know, we've moved from remote work to a remote work lifestyle. We've got Generation X, Y, Millennial, and Z in the workplace. We've got a much more technologically integrated connections. We look at productivity measures that transcend performance measures. And what this has also done is created this whole career convergence and divergence, where the use of technology, the use of career aspiration, the use of talent, they all kind of converge on this path that's leading to whatever this new normal is going to be. And keep in mind, this new normal is still undefined, but guess who has the opportunity to define it? Those of you who are doing these kinds of presentations and currently in leadership roles. So when we're trying to empower, when we're trying to move forward, here's some of the things that we have to think about in terms of beginning and moving a lot of these things forward ourselves. We're going to be thinking about you're moving to a multi-generational workforce, a multicultural workforce. You got a new remote workforce. You got a global workforce. You got a hybrid workforce and a technologically influenced workforce. My God, you can't handle all that by yourself, but you can do that if you choose to go to the mindset of empowering the people around you by providing them with the resources and the skills, the opportunities, the low-hanging fruit, all those things that are necessary to bring out the best in people, so that in the end, what you end up doing is moving from a notion of empowerment to what we know now as the emerging engagement element of being active and being involved in the workforce. So if nothing else, ladies and gentlemen, the platform has been set by way of COVID and other things that are going on for you to begin to move away from, how about this? Check your ego at the door and come in and make a difference. This program is one way of saying to you, check your ego at the door, come into the workplace and make a difference. Now, having said that, I've got something I want you all to think about. We're going to move into our breakout sessions. And in those breakout sessions, what I want you to do is take a little bit of time to discuss this particular question. I want you to provide an example of when you were empowered to take care of a task and explain how it helped you to grow as a professional. Provide an example of when you were empowered to take care of a task, explain how it helped you grow as a professional. So we'll move into our breakout sessions. I think we'll be coming back with Jason in about 5 minutes, and then then we'll get some feedback in terms of how what kinds of examples you all came up with. Anyway, so so I'm interested in getting some of the thoughts. So let me start with Stephanie. Is it Chaz? Are you out there? Stephanie,
yes.
Where are you?
Yep, Stephanie Chaz. Hi, everyone.
Did I say it correctly? Did I say it correctly?
As best as you could do, not knowing. Yes, Chez. It's Chez. I know it's a strange last name, but it's a lot shorter than my maiden name. So,
Okay.
Well, firstly, thank you and congratulations on the retirement.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In our breakout session, there was a couple of things that we discussed. First is the challenge of leading virtually. And in a new position, and one of the gentlemen had started a new position during COVID, and it was kind of a struggle learning how to lead virtually and empowering others in this virtual world. And the other topic was also being led and empowered by others makes you in a meeting feel more confident in sharing your ideas.
Yes.
And so it's that trickle down effect, when you're being empowered by your leadership, that in your role, you feel more comfortable.
Yes.
So I think that's, being engaged in the workplace it makes a huge difference. In my role, I have always had support by leadership. I've always been encouraged to make my own decisions, and leading a team now, I'm able to reflect that and empower them, helping them, maybe leading them in the right direction if they're unsure. We have new designers on staff or something, and they don't know the process of certain things, and just sharing that knowledge with them is hugely beneficial.
Well, and see, what I like about this, Stephanie, is that you are a living, walking example of what we're talking about. Because you live in the experience, you also know it to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Having come through it and gotten to, just listen to the operational words that you said. When you got into a position where you were able to lead others, that's the direction that you went in, because someone was able to role model that and do that for you. And that's the real impact of that. The other thing I would respond to, the concern about leading virtually, I think you all need to know the blueprint for this thing is still out. Those of us who are in the field looking at how do you lead virtually, those folks who are studying it, we don't have a blueprint, we don't have a map. All we have is a Mac screen in front of us, so, several faces looking at us trying to figure this out. So any insecurities you're feeling around that, it's okay. Because no one's really come up with a good plan for it. So thank you for sharing that. Stephanie, I appreciate it. How about Curtis Lorio? Curtis, are you out there?
Hi, Lee. Yes, I am.
Hey, okay. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
What kind of emerged out of yours?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation too. I greatly appreciate it. So I think a couple of things out of ours is that the exposure to leadership that you have when you're empowered to take on a task was incredibly important. We had a couple examples where you're actually grow within your organization by taking on a project and moving forward in your career, and also another example too of just making a change of something that you're passionate about. So I think all of us would agree that there's no real training for becoming a manager, and we have to think back on the empathy and put ourselves in their shoes as what would be exciting to lead projects and try to advance your career. And also I think too, what's important is that may not all be managers, but we're all helping lead projects, lead teams, working with coworkers. So it's not all about just being a manager. We all have a leadership role in some sort. Exactly.
One of the things that's kind of I think one of the things that happens is for a lot of you, I would imagine that you left work on a Friday and that following Monday you find yourself in a leadership role. So to your point, where oftentimes there's a training put in place for doing this, you're kind of learning it on the fly, you sink or swim, that kind of thing. And for those of you who emerge, one of the things that we know from looking at this is that oftentimes more people emerge with bad habits than with good habits. But when you've got time to, when someone's mentoring, when someone's being a role model, that like Stephanie pointed out, when you start to learn the good stuff early, it becomes easier to pass that on. And we get real comfortable with being in that kind of leadership role. And that example that I shared with you all about Quincy Jones leading a group of musicians toward this famous song, "We Are the World." That was his statement. He said, before you walk through this door, check your ego at the door, because we're here to make a difference. And as Jason has this pounded into his head for me time and time again, leadership is about making a difference, not just your difference, but your difference in the world. All right. Do we have time for any other random thoughts out here, Jason, before we move on? I don't want to impose on anyone's time.
If you've got any last thing that you want to share, go for it. Otherwise, we can get moving on. We're right on time with where we need to be.
Well, listen, I'll make this real quick, because I know we got other things to do. One, it's been an honor to be invited to do this today. I've been so looking forward to it, because unlike your typical high school graduation person who says you are the future leaders of the world, that speech has been given for 375,000 years, and it still means the same thing. But I do know that in this kind of a setting, it's as an older person going forward, I do have to say to you, you are the future leaders of the world. You are the ones who are going to make a difference. You are the ones who we're going to have to look to provide both the knowledge, wisdom, and insight and fortitude for moving forward. But as you do that, remember, it's not about you doing it yourself. It's about how you get others to step into that void that you create when you move forward. So having said all that, thank you for the opportunity, Jason. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Kathy. Thank everybody. And continue on. I know the rest is going to be just fantastic.
Lee, thank you so much. I cannot tell you how much I appreciated having you be a part of this event, and what an amazing take on leadership.